Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Richard Canfield. Richard, do you want to start by giving people a bit of an intro to yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Glenn. Well, happy to be on the show. I'm a recovering electrician by trade. Many years ago, I've been recovering for 15 years now. I'm recovered enough. I will turn on a light switch, and I got started in my real estate investing journey actually earlier on. I was with my family. We had bought our first rental property in the small town of Camrose, Alberta, and that was going back to like 1995, something like that. So I think I was like 12, 11 years old. Yeah. And so I was on title as a beneficial interest to that property. It was actually my siblings and my parents that did this deal together. It was a suited house, all the things that could possibly go wrong in one property. We had all that stuff happen, like guys in the basement suite, body checking each other, playing floor hockey in the basement through walls. I learned how to repair drywall. At one time, there was this dog named Goliath that was on the property. And what do you think a dog? Yeah, well, yeah. What do you think a dog named Goliath does when it's not well managed in a big yard?
Yeah,
it digs to China, basically. So, I had to reclaim the yard. I shingled my first couple of roofs there. I moved more appliances than I care to count and remember. So we learned a lot in that time, a lot of painting, did a lot of stuff, all those things, because we didn't have coaching. There were no podcasts back then. We didn't know where to get resources. We were just literally fumbling through it, like doing the best that we really could. And the result of that, after about 6 years, is I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I was pretty pissed off about this whole experience. And I had a really negative takeaway from this idea of investing in real estate. Yeah. When that property got sold, coincidentally sold right before the market elevated in the Alberta marketplace at that time. So maybe not the best timing, but we got out of it. And I got my share of the capital back. And I thought, oh, well, this is interesting. So all that work was for something, right? I started to see it from a different vantage point. And literally, it was about 3 months later that I was moving forward and buying another rental in this concept of a virtual apartment building, where you would buy like condominiums that were in a rental pool in different projects kind of all over the country, so that you could build, you could separate some of your risk relative to different markets that go through different economic cycles and what have you. Yeah. And so we sold that property, and I was getting right back into it again, because I could own and have the benefit of ownership without having to deal with tenants, toilets, termites, that whole song and dance. And, I just kind of progressed really from there. So, shooting forward to, 2009, this beautiful book, a self-published book, came into my life by my amazing mentor, a guy I love dearly. His name's R. Nelson Nash, called Becoming Your Own Banker. I learned about the infinite banking concept and immediately began implementing that in my life, and realizes that I have a spirit to give. And this was the thing I've been looking for my whole life. I knew that I needed to find a way to teach this to other people in Canada. Now we teach it in Canada as well as to our colleagues down in the States. So we're having a lot of fun doing that. And that led us to, today, where we've now literally just last week, we just did a book launch on our third book, and reached bestseller on Amazon in Canada in several categories. So we've actually got 3 books here that we've all done some successful launches. And I've all reached a bestseller status in a number of their categories. So ton of fun. And we're going to get started on book number 4 next.
That sounds awesome. Like, there's got to be some strategy to this. You don't just write a book and put it out and they just hope and dream. And there's got to be more. Is there some planning, some strategy, even getting that self-published? Maybe tell me a little bit about how how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big learning process. Thankfully, I've had some good coaching along the way. So one of my clients, Feng Shua, he's a real estate investor and does some coaching, and he's published a number of books that they've done. And so he's learned a lot of that. And so he does with his coaching clients, and he's offered to provide some of that service to me, helping them understand how to do a successful launch and so forth. So right now, where we're at, we just published through the Amazon. It's called KDP publishing platform. And you have to get your book created in a certain way. Everything has to be edited. Images need to be done in a certain way, all that kind of stuff. Yep. And that gets loaded up, and everything's basically print on demand. You can order author copies at a bit of a discounted price. Ordering in the US, I think you can get them a lot faster. In Canada, there's a bit of a lag to receiving the books, unfortunately. But it's a pretty seamless process. Now, there's many other ways to get the books into other categories. So we've actually recently, my partner Jason and we just recently hired an amazing individual. His name's Kerry Oberrunner, someone that we know through the Strategic Coach organization with Dan Sullivan. And he's really helped a lot of people do very successful launches on other platforms, things like, USA Today and bestseller lists on, New York Times, that sort of thing. So he's going to help provide us a new level of coaching as we look to scale and do more with this book series. This all started because my partner Jason and I, we're a member of an organization called Strategic Coach, and Dan Sullivan, who runs that organization, he puts out a quarterly book. Now, they're a very small, easy to read, short air flight type of book. They have some images that you could basically read in a simple form, or you can get a visual form, or you can click a link to listen to like a podcast episode. So he gives you all the ways of learning the content in that short little book. And we were inspired by that idea. And that's kind of the premise of how we started our journey. It turns out that our books are maybe, although you can read them typically in about 60 to 90 minutes, they're a little bit more involved than that. And what I thought was going to be easy turned out to be not as easy, especially when you have two authors. In our last book, we actually had a third author, a CPA, a friend that we work with, Henry Wong, Keep Taxes Away from Your Wealth.
Yep.
So there's a lot to know in that process. And we did hire a ghostwriter to help us out. Now, they basically put a framework together. We have the core content, we have the headings and the things that we want to get accomplished in the book. And then we usually have some, audio or like a video or a live webinar that we've maybe recorded that has several of the core components. And we provide a transcript and that resource to help that ghostwriter kind of put things together. And I mean, obviously there's a price tag to that. There's always a price tag.
Yeah.
In our circumstance, it's, the first book, I think we had to go through some revisions. The first company we hired didn't go so well. So we actually brought in somebody new. So it definitely cost us more to get it accomplished. And it took the longest amount of time. But once you get that first edition back, then you go through your own editing process and you fill in and you personalize it to your own circumstances quite a bit. I mean, in reality, we could have just went and released that book, but it wouldn't have been the book that we actually wanted to release.
Yeah, you got to make it your own. Yeah.
So you got to do that. Then I go through my version of it. My partner Jason goes through his. We maybe do another once over. We send it back to the ghostwriter. She cleans all the mess that we created up, right? Sends it back to us for a revision. We make some additional tweaks, send it back to her. She cleans those up, and then eventually gets to an editor for a final edit. And then meanwhile, she has a designer working on things like the cover. And then so we go through some iterations of all those things. Reasonably, it's pretty simple, but it does take time because we're all busy in life. We're running a business, we're doing things, we have a podcast, like we got a lot going on. So finding the time to commit to that is actually can be very difficult, especially with a busy travel schedule, et cetera. So it has taken a while. The goal is to get out one every quarter. We've been at it now for 2 years, and we just released book 3. So I would say we're a little behind schedule, but I like to tell people I'm slow, but I'm worth waiting for.
Yeah. Well, it's like, the whole 10X philosophy, you aim really high. Even if you come in below it, you're way ahead of your where you originally planned to hit, right? So
Totally.
So it still looks good, right? Okay, so no, that's great. This is completely not even relevant, even if you don't know the answer to this. But do you have any idea how many books you have to sell to be a bestseller? Like, what kind of volume is Amazon expecting to be able to get on that list? Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that I've created a new coaching program. I believe the new coaching program has way more value than any of the programs that have even existed in the past. What we've done is pre-recorded all the lessons so that you can work through it at your own pace, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to meet up on a regular basis to answer the questions, do deal analysis, and actually spend our time together working on things instead of spending our time learning things. I think this will make a seamless transition to buying in the United States and will help you solve a lot of your problems. If this is of interest to you, go to glensutherland.com/coaching. I hope to help you guys invest in the United States, and I hope we provide as much value as possible. Back to the podcast.
That's a very good question. And so there are actually some really good resources, coincidentally, on YouTube. And there's a few people I follow on there. And so if you get really clear and strategic on your categories, so everything is based on different categories. There's like some primary categories, and then there's some subcategories. So when you go to load your book in, you get to choose what those categories are that your book fits in. Now, your book does need to fit in those categories. It needs to make sense. Like I couldn't say I have like, hey, my book is, in personal finance, and then say it's about like, I don't know, children's math or something. Like it's not going to really fly. So there does need to be some rationale to that. But there's actually some tools that are out there that can help you see how many books need to be sold at that time, roughly speaking, in that category to be able to get to a number one status. And you can also see like the competition that's out there. So it gives you a bit better of insight to do that, as long as, again, that category is relevant. So, you know, the way we plan our book launch has been that we have a list of, obviously, our clients and people that subscribe to our podcast and the things that we do. And we do send everyone a notice. What we do is we reduce the book price down to essentially its lowest amount. The purpose of the book launch isn't really to make any revenue. And in general, for us, the purpose of our books isn't about revenue generation. It's about getting the information out. It's about getting it in people's hands and giving them tools so that those tools can help them make better decisions. That's really our focus. And so, you know, we our recent book, we had the price down, I think, to $8.95 Canadian, which is about the lowest that we could have that book printed on demand and shipped to somebody through Amazon service. And so which is roughly about 60% off the regular price of the book. Okay. Yeah. So we set that to happen over a couple of day period, you know, 48 hours, 72 hours, roughly. Send out some advance notices that that's going to happen. When we sent it out, we gave people the link to the book. We also offered just for us, we just decided, hey, let's offer a gift card draw just as a fun incentive, and why not? And so we did a $200 gift card draw. Everyone that clicks a certain link in our system, they can then enter their order number to confirm that they've made a purchase, and they can get entered into the draw. So we haven't done the draw on our most recent book. I'll probably be doing that in a couple of days. And that's always fun. It's fun to do that. It's fun to give away some money. It just makes it, it gamifies it a little bit for everybody. And, you know, I think the result was, just on this recent launch for Keep Taxes Away from Your Wealth, I think we sold roughly 500 books in about a 4 or 5 day period. So it's not like a monstrous amount, but when it comes to self-publishing, it actually is a monstrous amount. Yeah. So in order to hit the bestseller in certain categories, we probably only needed to sell maybe 25 or 30 bucks. Yep. So it just depends. You know, our first book actually was number one on, we sold enough to have it actually on number one on Amazon store in Canada across the whole country for the number one book sold in the country, for a couple of days at least anyway. Yeah. And it all goes down to that launch strategy and having a game plan around it so that you can do it. And then obviously, I mean, you want your book to be edited well enough and you want it to be good enough that you can get some positive ratings. If you can get some ratings that are legitimate on the book, which we've done, because it's adding value to people, well, then those help you on an ongoing basis, because Amazon's algorithm starts to serve up your book and your content as a recommended reading to people buying things that are similar. And so that's part of our overall strategy, is that, you know, as we're doing these books, you know, roughly every quarter, if we can maintain that pace, we'll see if we get there. But as we do that, each book that's purchased, it'll automatically serve up the other books that we've already created, if that kind of makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. So you're writing these books. What do you write them about? Right. I think this will transition into our second topic. What do you write your book about?
Oh, well, very, very good question. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about what we do is we teach people how to implement the process of becoming your own banker, as we learned from our mentor, Nelson Nash. Everything that we do is, you know, Nelson, he was an amazing, incredible individual. He passed away in March of 2019. So it's been 4 years. And, you know, I was blessed to know him. There's not a single aspect of my life, Glenn, that hasn't been positively impacted by getting to know that man and getting to know his concept. It's fundamentally changed all aspects of my life, how I think about real estate, how I think about all of it. And, you know, when Nelson passed away, he was 88 revolutions around the sun, he would say. When he passed away, so just imagine for a moment, imagine you have 45 pieces of cash flowing real estate. They're fully paid for, whether it's a multifamily buildings or they're single family, doesn't matter. They're fully paid for. They're producing a great cash flow. They're self-managed. You don't have to do a darn thing. Yep. The day that you kick the bucket, 17 of those properties are sold for their highest appraised value ever instantly. You don't have to put them on the market. You don't have to hire a realtor. You don't have to pay any legal fees. There's no capital gains, and all the money goes tax-free to the people you love and care about. Wow. 28 of those assets, those pieces of real estate, are still there, and the family has them distributed the way that you want, and they're still producing a cash flow and still building equity. That would sound pretty good, right?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. I'm wrapping my head around it. So,
well, that's exactly what happened with our Nelson Nash. So when Nelson passed away, he had 45 dividend paying whole life insurance contracts, all with a large amount of equity, very similar to a buy and hold piece of real estate. They were all generating a cash flow. Okay. When he passed away, 17 of those contracts, which is a form of property contract. Okay. We think of property as physical, but property also exists in the way of contract. And 17 of those paid out a tax-free death benefit when Nelson passed away, because 17 contracts, he was the body. He was the living person that was insured. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The family gets all that money. But 28 of those contracts, Nelson wasn't the body. It was his wife, his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren, plus 3 ex-business partners from real estate deals he did 25 years ago.
Okay.
All of those contracts got dispersed to the new owners, and Nelson was able to determine that before he died. Each one of those, 4 years later, it's 4 years since Nelson passed away and he left us, since he got called home. And each one of those contracts has continued to build and grow equity by contract every single year. They've increased in both cash value and in death benefit. And the current owner has the ability to tap in and access that equity, basically like a home equity line of credit, for anything that they want to do, any future investment they want to buy, the next vehicle they want to purchase, the next airplane they want to purchase, replacing the furnace or the hot water tank on a property, whatever their heart desires, all of it is available to be tapped into. That is the power of a multi-generational thinking way of conducting your business, whether it's in real estate or in some other mechanism that you're looking to do. It's the power of recognizing that you can control the banking function as it relates to you and your family's needs over multiple generations. And that's really what we get to teach people how to do. And our book series is varied aspects of how that works. Like, as an example, our second book, Cash Follows the Leader, is uninterrupted daily growth with high cash value insurance. And we teach you exactly how these contracts grow and accumulate equity, how you can tap into them for your own usage. And I have a 91-year case study in here of one of my clients in Alberta, where him and his wife get contracts on each other and on their 2 children. Yep. They're able to tap into that to create a passive income, a tax-free passive income in retirement, protect the family all the way along. Then when they kick the bucket, the kids have policies, they receive a death benefit, they pay off outstanding loans. Like, imagine you had a property that had a home equity line that had built up. You paid it all off. You have all that equity to use again, don't you?
Yep.
And then the kids can now use it to create a passive income for their own retirement, and then bless a generation that isn't even alive today. That's the way that we learn how to think and act multi-generationally. And when you incorporate that with real estate, it becomes very powerful.
I'm trying to get my head wrapped around all this. So with his policy, he would have had his kids as the beneficiary. So it would just pay their life insurance policy up. Do I have my head wrapped around this right?
Yeah, I'll give you a tighter example. So yeah. I have two children. They're 5 and 7 today. Okay. I own and control some insurance contracts on each of my kids' life. They each have 2 of them. Okay. I'm probably going to get more in the future, but for today, they each have 2.
Okay.
Now I get to use and tap into that equity while my kids are alive for the rest of the time. At some point, I could say, you know what, kids, you've earned it. I'm going to pass the ownership of this asset over to you now. It'd be like if I bought a piece of real estate and I gave it to them when they were 30 because they demonstrated that they know what they're doing. Okay. For me, though, I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to hold on to the ownership until the day that I'm gone. When I'm gone, ownership is already set to pass automatically to my wife. So my wife will maintain control until she's gone. And then when she's gone, the ownership automatically transfers to the child. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So when I want to go and start taking a passive income later on in life, I'm going to have multiple pieces of property in the way of insurance contracts, plus other assets, business interests, and I got passive income from books. I got a lot of things going on. All right.
Yeah.
But I'll be able to tap into that equity, and I can take what's basically a tax-free loan against that asset as collateral. Just like you can borrow against a house with a home equity line.
Yep.
And if you take that and you use it to go buy groceries, there's no tax on using that home equity line. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Same concept applies to the insurance. Now, when I want to go and draw down to use some of that capital later on in life, I might use the kids' policies. I'll use some of mine. I'll use my wife's. When I'm gone, there's going to be a huge chunk of tax-free death benefit that's paid because I've got a lot of it and it's growing every single day. When that gets paid out, I'm going to leave instructions that the kids will take that money and they will pay off the existing loans on their own policies and reset them back to zero.
Okay.
So if at that point in time, my kids are in their 60s, it would be the equivalent of them buying a policy 60 years ago and resetting it and having 60 years of time. It's like owning a piece of real estate that you've had for 60 years and resetting it back to the original. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then they can reuse all that capital as they see fit for their own purposes, their own asset accumulation or retirement needs, whatever they decide to do with it. They will have the right mindset though, because I'm going to teach them about the concept of family banking. So one of the things that we do already, I've started with my kids. We've now done it 2 years in a row when we go on a family vacation around spring break.
Yep.
We have a family banking meeting. Now at 5 and 7, it's hard to keep their attention for very long. So far our family banking meetings have been around 25 to 30 minutes. I make sure that my wife gets a treat, pick a treat, kids, so that you can pay attention. We talk about a variety of different things, but one of the things we talk about is the family vacation. What did you love? What were some of your experiences? Tell me what you loved about being here. And they share and they talk about all their memories. And then we say, now, why is it that we're able as a family to come and do this? They'll say, oh, because of the family banking system, Dad. Oh, high five, big hugs, reward, reward, reward. They say, now, kids, we access money from the family banking system. What do we have to make sure we do? Oh, Dad, we have to put it back in. Oh, why do we have to put it back in, kids? My daughter chimes in, so we can use it again later. Okay. And it's so fundamentally simple that kids can get this in a very easy way. Now, they don't know anything about insurance. They don't know anything about all the other components. What they recognize is that we have a system as a family that we use to access money for the things that are good in our life. And then if we are good stewards and we're good people and we understand the fundamentals and we replenish that pool of money, we can access it and reuse it again for all the things we want to do later. Very simple, very basic. And when you incorporate that on a grand scale in all the things you do in life, it just begins to expand and explode. And you're operating in like a personal financial aquarium. So your money resources don't leave the aquarium. They're contained and you get to cycle and recycle that capital again and again and again for the things that you and your family are going to be spending your money on. I'll give you an example, Glenn. You've got probably a number of pieces of real estate. Do you have any garages?
Like attached to houses or on the property?
Yeah. Okay, great. And so, usually people park in their garage, at least in Canada, when it's cold, you do that in the wintertime. Most people just stock their garage full of crap so they can never park in it. But ideally, you can park in your garage. Well, when you leave your garage to go buy groceries, go take your kids to hockey and soccer practice and dance and all the things that you're going to do, and you go to work or you go to your podcast studio, wherever you're going to go, when you return back to home, you park at the garage or in the garage. You return the vehicle to the warehouse. It's just a storage facility for your car. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Our money is just like that. Our money needs to be stored and warehoused somewhere. Then it needs to leave that warehouse to go and do things, buy groceries, go pay the tax man, go pay the mortgage guy, go pay to replace the furnace, go buy the hot water tank, go do a down payment on a piece of real estate. Our money's going to leave to go do those things. But then the money has to come back to the warehouse. Well, when it comes back to the warehouse, it should all come back to the same location. The insurance contracts that we work with, the idea of becoming your own banker is to control the flow of that money so you can constantly expand that warehouse for all the things you're already doing in life.
Makes a lot of sense. Oh, Richard, I want to keep this to a reasonable amount of time, but I know you have a ton of information. People wanted to get some more of this. How do they find you? Where's your handles? Maybe a podcast, and we'll
Well, One thing I'd love to do, if it's okay with you, Glenn, I'd like to just give away a book. Is that cool?
Sure.
Okay, great. So if anybody wants, they can go get our book, Cash Follows the Leader, by going to cashfollows.com. That's cashfollows.com. You can go ahead and grab a copy of that book, nice and easy. It'll get a digital download right away, and some other resources will be sent to you. It is available on, Amazon and Kindle and all that stuff. And the audio version is coming out shortly. And the other best thing that you could probably do to learn more about this concept, what we recommend is we have a 7-step guide that helps people understand a little bit about how it all comes together. And it gives you a recommended learning path so that you can begin the journey of discovery to see if it's even the right fit for you. And it may not be, and that's totally fine. You can go to 7 steps. That's 7steps.ca. The number 7 or the word 7, but number 7steps.ca works really well. And our podcast is Wealth Without Bay Street. Bay Street being the Canadian equivalent of Wall Street.
Yep.
And we have a lot of fun on there. We have a lot of great episodes. I think we're about 170 or so, and a ton of good content. Lots of great interviews with real estate investors. We have a whole client series. And of course, we even have a lot of, business entrepreneurs talking about, their pitfalls on their journey and how they've overcome those things. And we have a ton of fun. It's a lot of fun, just like your show is a lot of fun. And you add a ton of value to the people that listen in. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
I appreciate that. And thank you for coming on the show. So much information. I might have to listen to it again. Might have to download a book and, get myself more educated on the banker, right? Being my own banker, I got to do some more research. Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That was a nice video. Bye.